growth doesn't happen without us stretching out of our present state. And that's typically not always comfortable.
Hi, friend. I'm Susan Beth, and you are listening to the Susan Beth Podcast, where we talk about living life intentionally and about trusting that the desires you have deep within you are there for a reason. I believe that the creator of the universe put those desires within you and that they are pathways to your purpose. My desire is that this would be a space that encourages you to lean in and to hear the whispers of the divine, and that you would be reminded of things that I honestly believe you already know. That you, my friend, are here for a reason. So if you're here for more conversations in that kind of space, welcome. Let's go.
Hey, I hope you are doing well. I don't know what it's like where you live, but here in North Florida, spring is definitely springing. The temperatures, they're slowly climbing up, giving us a little peek and foretaste into summertime. But right now, I'm thankful that the humidity levels aren't summer level yet. So there's that. But I asked a question at the end of last week's episode, which was, where are you growing in this season? And I was asking that question because in that episode, I was talking about how this spring season for me personally wasn't looking like what I had envisioned heading into the season. I was talking about growth. But I recognized in playing that out that even though growth wasn't visible in the ways that maybe I thought it was going to be, there was growth taking place, which I'll admit that it felt a little like a setup after processing what I just shared when I flipped the page and saw this week's focus in the Spring Journal titled Growing and Stretching. And I touched on this a little bit in the Sunday email that I send out, which this past Sunday was Mother's Day. And so the idea of growing and stretching is definitely something that I experienced with motherhood. First, there is the physical stretching that takes place in our bodies as women to make room and to accommodate for the birthing process and for the new life that is coming. But I mentioned also that the growing and the stretching doesn't stop after you are holding that precious new baby in your arms, because you witness your heart expanding to love beyond what you thought was even possible, as well as being stretched with growing pains as you navigate what it means to love and care so deeply. So with the reflecting and the celebrating this past weekend, I was reminded that growth isn't always necessarily fun in the moment, but it is definitely worth it in the end. And I have felt a little shifting the past month or so. And I think I mentioned last week in the episode that I had been sick for a few weeks. So with feeling this shifting, I didn't really try to press into anything because I know that when the body is weak, it's not the best time to trust your thoughts or your feelings. So I knew there was time after I started feeling better. So I'm starting to look at what that shifting, what I'm sensing maybe is. And I'm thinking that maybe what I've been sensing is the growth I'm looking for is going to require some stretching. And I've done lots of stretching these past several years. And some of that stretching is involved taking classes and being mentored in areas that I was feeling called to step into in a greater way. And there's a level of vulnerability when you pivot and you show up differently in life or in different spaces. And one of those reasons is people typically don't see all the behind the scenes in your heart and your mind that have been taking place for sometimes years. So sometimes a pivot might appear to be out of the blue when it's not so out of the blue to you. But I think because I have experienced such growth personally and professionally with different projects I've been putting my hand to and sharing them in a greater way. Not that I definitely don't see areas where growth is still available and needed. But I'm thinking that maybe I was just feeling comfortable with where I had grown and all the growth I have experienced and was just hanging out, where I had become to feel safe again. And just like I was reflecting earlier about the growing pains with childbirth and motherhood, it kind of works the same way in all the other areas of our life. Growth doesn't happen without us stretching out of our present state. And that's typically not always comfortable. I felt challenged in my spirit as I began to read and to take in this week's focus from the Spring Journal. The first part reads, "Springtime beckons us to transcend the boundaries of our being, urging us to mature into the fullness of all we were created for." Then that last line is what grabbed me, because I want to mature into the fullness of all that God has for me. And just to be clear, I don't think that it's all about the doing. It's always more about the being. And I have experienced that the doing is just a natural outflow of the being. As I was praying and processing this week, I found my mind going to Ephesians 3. Some of the words from that scripture kept coming to my mind. So I looked it up in the Message version, and I'll just read a few of those verses. This is, "My response is to get down on my knees before the Father, this magnificent Father who parcels out all heaven and earth. I ask him to strengthen you by his Spirit, not a brute strength, but a glorious inner strength, that Christ will live in you as you open the door and invite him in. And I ask him that with both feet planted firmly on love, you'll be able to take in with all the followers of Jesus the extravagant dimensions of Christ's love. Reach out and experience the breadth. Test its length. Plumb the depths. Rise to the heights. Live full lives. Full in the fullness of God." And it goes on to say in verses 20 and 21, "God can do anything, far more than you could ever imagine or guess or request in your wildest dreams. He does it not by pushing us around, but by working within us. His Spirit deeply and gently within us." Guys, our God is so gracious in his patience and his love towards us. In his Spirit, it's always nudging and pulling us towards him. Yet he's given each of us free will to choose. Choose to receive all that he desires for each of us. And as we just read, he desires for us to live full lives, full in the fullness of God. May we say yes to all that he is inviting each of us to. I love you guys, and we'll talk soon.
Hey, you. Thanks for listening. And if you would like to connect more, head over to SusanBeth.com and sign up, and you will be one of the first to find out about anything new. Plus, there's a special free download available just to say thanks. If something in this episode did speak to you, would you do me a favor and share it with a friend that you think it might resonate with as well? And until next time, keep showing up in the world just as God purposed you to do, because you being you is exactly what we all need.